If you find yourself in a place where there is some kind of ending in your life and something new is beginning, and these quiet or maybe loud chapter changes, and it can be anything from getting a new job to beginning a new relationship, or maybe even starting a new creative project. A vision board is a beautiful way to support yourself during those transitions in your life. A vision board is, to me, it's a visual representation of your dreams, your goals, and whatever you want to create in your life next. As you can see, it is a collection of images. You can think of this as a collage, right? And so what I love to do on the vision boards, and we can get into this more later, but I love to have one central image, and we'll talk about that soon. And I also love to have images that are more poetic. So like I have this one in here. It's like almost like blowing like magic into this year, right? The unexpected little miracles and moments that I was inviting in. I was also working with my inner child here. And so I included this one of the little girl with the crown because it was like this homecoming and this return to that little girl within me who is still very much a part of me and wants to create with me. And, so if it can be literal, this was obviously like just getting more in shape and moving my body and like giving myself that peace and that time as a mom to myself, right? So I had a little girl when I did this vision board. And you can see I have like a mom and a daughter doing yoga together. And just this image of this love and connection between a mom and daughter, that really resonated with me. And I wanted more of that. I also have a little kid drawing, just this reminder to be playful and present with my daughter, to bring in that childlike energy so that I can meet her where she was as well. And I love adding flowers to my vision board. This idea of blooming and awakening and growing. I think flowers are such a beautiful way to represent that with an image. And I also like to think of all of the things that I'm creating and putting out into the world. Every time I create something like this video, I like to think of it as like a bouquet of flowers that I am preparing and then giving to whoever needs it. And so I found this image of this woman. She's really well known for working with flowers. And I just loved this image of her holding this bouquet. Then she was like getting ready to give it to someone. All of these images, when you look at them throughout the year, they become this returning point, this like home base that you can come back to over and over, so that no matter what happens during the year, you can come back to this space and be recentered and grounded in what it is that you truly need and what feels most nourishing to you. So we're going to take time today to figure out what that is. I just want to add a note here that this is a really fun activity to do with kids or little ones or other people in your life, right? If you have some friends you want to invite over, when we create vision boards and when we dream together, it gets amplified. And, if you have kids or even if you're looking to deepen your relationships with others, when we sit down and have these conversations, we are seen, we are vulnerable, and we are supported. So, if you have like a teenager and you're like, what is going on in their head? And you just want to be able to sit and talk with them, any creative activity is going to open up these pathways for communication just naturally. And I really encourage you to sit with your families and do this activity because it just gets amplified and you get to be supported with what you're creating next. And that makes all the difference. And so what you'll need for this are the pretty simple materials. It doesn't have to be anything really fancy or professional. What I typically use for the glue is Mod Podge. I actually use a combination. Sometimes I'll do the glue stick on the bottom of the images. I'll even tape some of the images together. So any combination of these adhesives would be good. And then obviously a pair of scissors, If you're feeling really brave, and obviously with adult supervision, you can actually use an X-Acto knife. Sometimes it's easier for me to cut things out of magazines with an X-Acto knife. Just be careful. And yeah, so then you have magazines, and I'll just show you some of my favorite ones are just ones that I work with a lot. I have a lot of these family circle ones. I don't know why, they just come to our house, and so I have a lot of extra. It's always good to have like a stash of magazines for your art projects. And then my mother-in-law is a master gardener, and she always gives me her flower magazines when she's finished with them, and I am obsessed. She knows to just give them all to me, and I work with them, like I was saying before, in the collages. They're just so beautiful to use for inspiration and for this kind of work. So a lot of our vision board images, they can be literal, or they can be more poetic and more like metaphors. And so if you're looking for a really just inspiring, and I just want to say like yummy images, this Bella Grace series, I believe they come out with 2 or 3 of these a year. But these magazines have the most gorgeous images, and I always find like really powerful, poetic ones to use with these. Like just the energy of that, right? There's a lot more poetic ones, more artistic ones. Like that right there says it all, right? So Bella Grace, and yeah, my friend introduced these to me a few years ago, and I've been obsessed ever since. Like even the texture of the pages, it feels so good to work with. So this is like if you want a Christmas present or to treat yourself for your vision board, I would recommend a Bella Grace magazine. And so last but not least, you will need a big board or piece of paper that you're going to put all your images on. And you can see the thickness of the foam core. It works really nice for if you're going to use a ton of glue. You know, they do get kind of warped over time. You can see, I don't know if you can see, it just gets a little curved on the edges. So if you want to, you could, that is one option. You could also do a thinner poster board and use more tape than glue, if that makes sense. And, you know, something I love to do that I started doing recently is to actually frame my vision boards. So if you want to frame your board, I would definitely do a thinner poster board and not the foam core. It'll just be easier for the whole process. Okay, so now we get to go into the actual creation part, which is obviously my favorite. And what matters most during this part, more than anything, it's not about you getting this right or wrong, but instead about you creating this from your body and not your head, right? So what do I mean by that? If I am creating a vision board, you know, if I was just talking to my friend and kind of up in my head, which is how, you know, we are most of the time throughout the day, it would probably sound like this, like, oh, I want to do this course and I want to launch my book and I want to write this and do this series of paintings, but oh my gosh, I have all this time in my schedule and blah, 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 right? Like we're up here. And so when we create our vision boards and we create with intention, imagine if we did this instead. And this is your first step. You can place a hand on your heart, or maybe there's another part of your body that is calling for attention or love, or another part of your body that is holding the power and the frequency of what you are creating, what you are here to create. And so I invite you to give yourself a moment and really tune in, right? Can you feel the shift? And you can close your eyes. And just find your breath. Right? It can feel like a really big task to say, oh, come into your body. No big deal, right? But it can be as simple as reconnecting to your breath. That is the fastest way to get back into your body. And so just follow your inhale. And notice with that exhale the softening. Notice how all of those things you were just doing and fade away. And just let yourself fully arrive in your body, in this inner temple. And to the parts of you that know exactly what you need. And the parts of you that know exactly how to create it. Beautiful, yeah. And so when we arrive into this place, this deeper inner temple, the truth of our desires is clear. And so if I had that same conversation with my friend and I'm in my body, I would say, I have so much inside to create and share, and I am looking for ways to express. And I am finding those ways, I am making those pathways. Right? So there's a shift. And there's so much power in here that we can tap into just by doing that. Right? And I know you're here, you get it. All right? I just want to make sure that you get that point. So in this process, when we are creating, I invite you as many times as you need to come back into your body. Because your body knows the answers to this, right? Your body knows what it needs. You know, there's the wild animal part of us that has these answers, especially when we come into this creative energy. It knows how to navigate it. And so what you could look at this vision board practice as, it's actually a practice to stay in our body and let our body inform what we create. And so come back into your body as many times as you need to during this process. And notice what happens when you are creating from that space. And so almost like an anchor or this X marks the spot, you can notice this place within you and stay here, but slowly you can now shift to your journal and we'll do our second step. Okay, so for step 2, all you need is something to write with and something to write on. That can be a journal or a piece of paper. It does not have to be fancy. All we get to do for this part is write about the perfect day. And so as you write about the perfect day, what is the perfect day for you? What does it look like? What are you doing in the morning? What are you eating for breakfast? Who are you with? Where are you, right? Like what city are you in? And just go through your whole day from when you wake up to when you go to bed and write everything down that comes to mind. And just one final point here before you start writing. This is a blank canvas. It's a new chapter. And so I invite you to dream big here, right? Like, you know, if you're like, oh, I really want to be on the beach on this day, but we don't have money for this, or we don't have time, you know, put yourself where you want to be and just be really honest with yourself with what that is, who is with you, and what feels like the most nourishing to your soul. And so just give yourself a minute. Notice those old stories that come up where it's like, oh, we can't add that, and then add it anyway. And we'll see where you end up with all of that. And so when you're finished with that and that feels complete, then step 3 is all about going back through your day and just finding the emotions. So when you're eating breakfast with whoever that person is, you know, how does it feel? How do you feel as you move through that day? Do you feel happy, free, supported? Right? So we're going to pull out those emotions and then just write them in a list next to it. If you see the words, you can actually circle them, but we're going to work with these emotions for the next step. So just get curious about what those are and make a list. So step 4 is selecting your images. Now you have a list of all of the emotions that you're feeling during this perfect day. And I just invite you for a moment to really feel into them and notice the emotions that are on the page. And so if you've ever listened to Marie Kondo, she talks about what brings you joy and what doesn't. And you go through your house and you hold on to objects and you start tuning in to that inner knowing of if this brings you joy or not. And so when you create your vision board off of these emotions, it's the same kind of process. So you get really in tune with the frequency of those emotions. And what you are discovering in your magazines now are images that have that same frequency, right? So for example, if you really want a car, that's a little head up, right? But if you really want a car and that's something you want next year, then you wouldn't find a picture of that car. You would find a picture of how it feels to be driving that car. So, I like to think about our emotions. Our emotions are energy in motion. And they can be so oftentimes the language of the subconscious. And so this vision board is really about speaking to your subconscious. And so when you go about it this way, you're already going to be speaking that same language. And so with these images, I'll show you some examples, some different things that you're going to be looking for. And so we have this vision board here. And so what helps me the most is you have all of your images that are in alignment with the frequency of the emotions we just talked about. And then what I like to do is I like to add this middle image. And this image, it is not a picture of you. And I think it's very important to note too that none of these images are images of you. Especially images of you in the past, right? I just keep thinking, if I want to lose weight, then I would want to put a picture of me when I was skinnier, before kids. And what happens when we do that is we're actually romanticizing the past, we're getting attached to the past, and it is almost like working backwards, right? Instead, I would ask myself, how does it feel now to be in a stronger body and to be in shape? And it would look different and feel different than that image from the past. So instead, I would find a new image. And it just, it's so important. We have all these stories tied to images from our life, and it can kind of convolute and, kind of muddy up this process, if that makes sense. And so, when you find this image, it doesn't even have to be my one friend was making one, and she found this gorgeous image of this little girl. And, she is an adult, she's not a little girl, but she really wanted to get back in touch with that little girl, that inner child. And there was so much joy in this girl's face, and it was perfect for her. So it doesn't have to be the age you are or anything like that. It is somebody who is embodying the energy of what you are working towards. And I love to put that in the middle. I've actually done some where I kind of put it to the side and it got a little lost, but it is very helpful to put that image in the middle. And what else? You can, they also when I've learned about vision boards, people are don't put words in there because, it's bringing it away from the subconscious more. But for me, when I create these boards, there's always a phrase that comes through that just really calls me. And it's from the magazine. So Nourish Your Soul. This is actually still one that feels very alive and important for me right now. And so I've actually pulled it and I have it in my studio. And so as you're finding images and you're going through magazines, I just want to share 2 different approaches you could take to the final collage. The one approach that I took that was really powerful and simple is that you just make one image with your images. You find one image that sums everything up. Of course, I had to add a couple extra, but it's one solid composition. This is one option that you can do. And I actually did 2 of these so you can see examples, but these were really powerful, and they're still powerful for me today. So that's the simple option. But if like the ones I've already shown you, these are more of a collage and, a lot more images in there. And they've both been very powerful for me. So maybe you can tune in before you begin and see which one is calling you, if you want to do more images or a more simplified one. And I do have words in both, but you don't need words. Now we're on to step 5, which is the fun part of just gluing everything down. It might take some time and some finagling with where your images are. I find that I like to put them almost in a rainbow order. That's kind of fun for me. But whatever feels right for you, let these images speak to you and really feel into their energy and what image wants to be next to it or around it. Maybe you have different sections on your vision board. Whatever works for you, the rest of this process can really be intuitive. And remember, you just keep coming back to your breath and to that gut feeling that's going to tell you if this is a yes or a no. When you're finished with this, and once again tuning in, you will find this moment when it feels complete. And you can let this process, you can do, take as much time as you need to complete this. But when you have that feeling like this is complete, and you look at it and it's exciting you, and you can feel like all these new possibilities opening, you can move on to step 6, which is simply finding a spot to display your vision board or hang it somewhere that you're going to see it frequently throughout this next year or this next chapter. I encourage you to put your vision board somewhere in your house, somewhere in your studio, somewhere where you're going to see it a lot throughout the year. And then when you have those moments where it's like something happens in the day and you're like, oh yeah, that was on my vision board. It's almost like a relationship. You can come back to your vision board and just say, thank you, universe. I will take more of that, right? It's this constant communication. And, these practices, they create bridges from where we are now and where we want to go. They create bridges from what is unseen and unknown to what is real and in front of us. And this is just one way to do it. It's one tool that you can use. And I invite you to make it your own and really run with this till you can feel that response from your heart, like, yes, this is it. This is what I'm creating. And then you create towards this new vision, towards this dream. This is what pulls you forward. It calls you forward. And so I hope that you find exactly what you need in this process, and maybe there's some happy discoveries in the meantime. And I hope this tool is something that will serve you throughout all of the moments of this next chapter that's unfolding.